Hello, everyone. As a note, I'm recording this from a hotel room, so if the audio or video quality is not the best, sorry. But if you don't know me, I'm Quinton Johnson, new member of Art of War, and I'm going to be here talking about my list for the Streamhouse RTT 2023. Hoping it goes better than my list for the Streamhouse RTT 2022. But anyways, this time I am running Craftworld Eldar, the Asuryani, a favorite faction of mine, probably my favorite faction of all time. And we're doing something a little bit off the beaten path, a little off meta, because I had a couple of really interesting challenges. The first and most important thing is that I got paired into John round one, again, somehow. And John is running Chaos Knights, which at the best of times can be a very difficult matchup for Craftworld Eldar. So I knew that if I wanted to have a decent chance of winning this thing, I had to be able to deal with Chaos Knights right out of the gate. So that was really the largest decision-making factor, because I really like how Craftworld Eldar stacks up against the rest of the RTT meta. I really like my game into Tau. I think my secondaries are stronger than Richard's, just because I have psychic options. And I shoot about as hard as he does, and I have the same ability trick, so we're kind of in a staring contest, but I have better passive secondaries than he does. I like Craftworld Eldar into Demons. I like Craftworld Eldar. Nowadays, I think I like it into Harlequins, because the 5-up invuln makes it much easier to pass the stat check if Jack decides to rush me. I've had great success into Marines, and into World Eaters with Craftworld. So really the biggest thing that I had to kind of shape everything around was Chaos Knights round one. And you'll notice a couple of weird tech pieces that were in there for that. The first, I think the most important thing to note, is there's the Avatar is in this list. 280 points of Strength 14, AP 5, Damage D6 plus 2, Smackdown. And he's really got a very defined role in this list. And that role has two parts. He's not supposed to, get Fortune and go out turn one, although he realistically could do that if for some reason I decided that I wanted to play like a moron. His goal is to sit behind a wall and tell John that if he comes near me, I have the melee capability to just tell him to go away. Unlike the rest of my army, if 1 or 2 knights or 3 or 4 knights catch a cheeky bead to one flank of him, see the tip of his spear or whatnot, he's not going to die. He's toughness 8, half damage, 14 wounds, 2-up, 4-up. With Fortune, he's going to have a 5-up feel no pain. So my plan for him is he's probably going to come out turn 3 or 4. If you have 2 advanced dice and Quicken, you can move really fast. So my plan is for him to kind of sit behind a wall and then pop out late, where John doesn't have the resources to deal with him effectively. And then you can, take a middle objective, lock down a side of the board. And even if John charges me with 1 or 2 armigers, I'm probably not going to die, and then I'm definitely going to kill John on the clapback. Looking down the rest of the RTT pathway, I actually like the Avatar into Tau. Railguns aside, a lot of Tau's best shooting is Strength 8, and being Toughness 8 can provide a really kind of an awkward break point where Tau's damage sometimes just kind of bounces off. It normally doesn't, but with Fate Dice and Fortune and half damage, if you get a little bit lucky, you can totally make it work. He's really good to sit there and then put Baharoth behind, because they have to devote all of their resources into cleaning the Avatar. Sometimes they won't have the kind of oomph left over to take down Baharoth. Especially if as a lot of Tau lists have running these days, and a lot of activations, and the commander with W2 has to shoot the Avatar. Rounding out the rest of my HQ choices in this Arcs of Omen detachment, I have 2 Farseers and Baharoth. Baharoth is amazing. Never leave him without him. He's, in my opinion, the best solo model in the game right now. He's just incredible. I have a Farseer who has Kurnos's Bow and Mark of the Incomparable Hunter, as well as Doom and Fortune. He's kind of my go-getter Farseer. He plays towards the front, casting Doom. If he needs to, I can slam down a bunch of Fate Dice and he'll pop a bunch of Mortals off. He's really reliable for that. He's a great vehicle for those less than desirable Fate Dice, hits and wounds specifically. And there's also a lot of times where you just really need to guarantee 5 or 6 damage. Say there's an armature down to like 5 or 4 wounds, and you just need to know that you can finish it off. If you have the hit dice in the bank, you can guarantee it, and you can move on with your life. It lets you plan your turn a lot more reliably. The other Farseer has Guide and Focus Will. Focus Will I used to kind of pshaw. I thought it was a less than optimal power, but as I've been playing with it, turns out it's like the best power in the book. Not just because it gives me a much more reliable access to psychic secondaries if my opponent has a deny, but just because if I have a critical power that has to go off, it makes them much more reliable, not just into denies, but just in general. A lot of the other powers casts on 6 or 7s, and fate dice are awesome in guaranteeing those, but sometimes you don't roll the fate dice, or say I need to cast Doom and Guide and Fortune. If I put Focus Will out, then all of a sudden the 7 becomes a 5, and it's much more reliable to cast that without a fate die. I have 4 Warlocks, my very standard loadout. I have a Warlock with Conceal Reveal, who's just a solo Warlock. I thought about taking Embolden here, but Embolden's kind of a power, whereas Conceal can actually be really useful. Specifically in regard to the jet bikes, and we'll talk about that why later. The solo Warlock has a job to do. His job is to go out and do Warp Ritual for 3 turns and then die. The squad of 3 Warlocks is another favorite tech piece of mine I see a lot of Craftworlds players playing with. Because they're 3, they get to know 2 and cast 2 powers. But also 3 Warlocks on jet bikes is like a shockingly okay amount of damage sometimes. If you kick out a Smite, and then all the shots from the catapults and Hail of Doom, and then sometimes if they charge in, they're really good at finishing that last wound off something. A lot of times what'll happen is I'll shoot all the main activations, and then I'll leave a squad with 2 guys. Or, there's 4 Kroot Hounds on an objective, or an armature with 1 wound. They're pretty good at just like chipping that down, the things you don't want to have to deal with. In troops, we only have 1 troops choice. I have a Corsair Void Reaver unit, which I know is a little bit of a weird choice, but it frankly came down to the fact that I had like an awkward 50-ish floating points, and I would have preferred this to be a Viper, but I didn't have the fast attack slots for the Vipers. So they became a Void Reaver unit. Again, with the Reavers of the Void special rule, they're okay at flinking that last wound off. They can charge in with something else to soak Overwatch. They're also a 5-man troops choice, so if I take battlefields out of it, they're great at just holding a point and doing it once. Complementing that, I have 6 Corsair Void Scarred with Wayseeker who knows Fateful Divergence, the extra CP power. This list can get very CP intensive if I want to use the reroll Battle Focus, and then Fire and Fade, and then Blade Storm, and probably reroll a Psychic Test. I can get up to 4 or 5 CP a turn. And I start with 4, which isn't bad, but because I'm running the Avatar, I couldn't run Fateful Divergence on the guy on bike, which is what I normally do. Instead, he had to take Fortune. So I added the squad of Void Scarred in so that they could cast that. They kind of sit in the back. Again, I envision them fulfilling a similar role to the Void Reavers. My job is to camp a backfield objective and get me a CP every turn. If I don't need the CP, they can battlefield data, whatever they have to be doing, which to hold a point kind of thing. 3D Dire Avengers, the Exarchs all have 2 Shuriken Catapult because it's free. Best units, like, awesome. I love them. Very dependable damage output all the time. The AP4 is incredible. AP2 base is really good into Knights because it takes them to their invuln right off the bat. And if you can force the rotate early, or if you can make it so the rotate's not a viable strategy if they have to be spending CP on other things like Ravenous Terror Shades or the Herb Attack strat, Dire Avengers can do a really surprising amount of damage. There's a really cheeky combo in here, and that is Dire Avengers have a 2 CP strat called Avengers of Asoyan, which is they're below half strength. At the end of the shooting phase, they get to shoot again, which sounds great. It's really good at making things like the rocket hats on mortars or Imperial Guard mortars a lot less able to target them, because if they shoot and you only kill 1 or 2, then also that squad can shoot twice. But also, the Avatar of Cain has a beam weapon, which hits everyone in its path. So you can shoot the Dire Avengers, have them lined up so that the Avatar of Cain shoots and kills whatever they didn't need to finish off or whatever. He'll kill a Dire Avenger along the way, which unlocks the ability to shoot twice. So the squad can get 63 shots. in a single turn, which is pretty hilarious on 6's auto wound in AP4. There's 3 Shroud Runners, which I love. They're just great with the pregame move. They get to go up, take a midfield ruin. They're incredible behind enemy lines targets turn 1. And there's a surprising amount of shooting. I really like them in base Craftworld lists, where I've been running a lot of the Death Jester with Harvester of Torment and Favor of Segarach, because a lot of characters have 5 wounds, and the Death Jester does damage multiples of 2, so he gets 2 failed saves through, and then the Shroud Runners can pick the last wound off. I don't have the Death Jester here because he's not incredible into Chaos Knights. He's kind of expensive for what he does. He averages like 2, maybe 3 damage a turn. But the Shrouds are really good. They're just great utility. They're 9 wounds, and their bases are really big, which makes move blocking attractive into Chaos Knights because the Herpatrack strat is much less effective into them. Because, odds are good. He kills 1 base, but not 2 with 6 mortal wounds. And then there's still, 2 60mm bases there that can take up space, that can be annoying, they can move block, whatever they need to do. They're also pretty cheeky into the big guy turn 1, because if you have wound dice, you just drop those, and you're like, 3 damage plus 3 saves. And then the hilarious stars of the list is 17 Wind Rider jet bikes with shuriken cannons. And here's the story behind this. I knew Chaos Knights were going to be real rough for me, so I thought about taking a bunch of anti-tank options, right? I was like, I'm going to take 30 Fire Dragons and 3 Fire Prisms and 90 cannons. I don't even know if that fits in the list, but, ton of anti-tank shooting. And it turns out Fire Dragons are actually really bad into Chaos Knights. They're not bad, but like a unit of 10 will kill a Herpatrax Knight on average with about 6 or 7 wounds to spare, which is pretty good, but not incredible for a super fragile 240-point shooting unit that has to get within 12 inches to shoot, or costs more points if you want to add the Exarch powers. Like, it's just not worth taking. To like maybe kill a knight if there's some spikes on invulns, or I roll a bunch of 2s, they only get reroll 1s, and I don't want to cast Guide on them. They're just kind of clunky to use, they're not great. So Fire Dragons were out. Fire Prisms are really big, and they're very CP intensive. If you want to Fire and Fade, you have to spend 2 CP and then 2 CP to make the Fire Prisms linked fire to kill 1 Armiger. And then at that point, we're investing like 300 and something points plus the 4 CP a turn just to make the Fire Prisms work, and kill an Armiger. So I've been running 1 unit of 9 Wind Rider jet bikes, and it's been really, really effective. And here's why I'm running 27. The first is the 9-man. Its job is to get Doom, Guide, Jinx, Bladestorm, and just pick a knight up every turn. Just point at an Armiger and say, you're dead with no room to spare. If there's 2 wounded Armigers, or I think I can cover my kind of faults, I can split fire pretty effectively with this unit. If they're Bladestorming, they really like the hit dice because every hit becomes a wound and a hit. That's their job. The other 8-man unit is kind of the backup if something happens to the 9-man, if they get chipped down from Havoc launchers or whatnot. They can kind of take over in the primary damage role. 8 Wind Riders without support might kill an Armiger. It'll certainly hurt an Armiger. But if you use the real battle focus test and you're just barely towed into a terrain feature, you have about a 75% chance of just having the unit be able to fire and fade regardless, right? It's a 4-up rerollable. And I don't love that, but there are a lot of opportunities where the jet bike unit can pop out, see the very back of a base, shoot, and then scoot behind safety a lot more reliably. Alternatively, in the early turns of the game, the 8-man unit, if it cuts a really hard flank where John's not able to move a ton of knights over super early, and this is also pretty good against Adam's Grey Knights, because they can do something pretty similar, or any army that has a lot of low AP shooting. What you do is you cast Fortune, Conceal, and Protect on the jet bike unit. And then it goes to a 1-up save, you lightning fast it, so it's 1-up save, -1 to hit, 5-up Funeral Pain, and then all of a sudden Chaos Armiger shoots or Dread Knight shoots, and it hurts, it's not very comfortable, but you're not losing the whole squad, you're losing 1 or 2 guys per activation, which means even if things go south, you don't kill whatever you're shooting at. If you're properly lined up, then you can survive the return fire a lot better than most opponents are thinking, which is something that Eldar don't do a ton, and I really value them for that. Especially late game, if they get Conceal and Protect and the Avatar gets Fortune, and they both push out at the same time, the opponent has to put a lot of effort into killing the Avatar. And the Avatar sometimes doesn't want to do that. So this list does not have a ton of combat, aside from the Avatar, obviously. I normally like a squad of Howling Banshees. I really like a Harlequin detachment with a Troop Master with the Foot in the Future. But those things are really simple to getting mortared out turn 1. And I really wanted to focus on getting past that first hurdle, because once I get past John, I think the spread of games becomes a lot easier for me. I think I have a much better shot into those armies. So I ended up opting not to take that. And Crafts with Eldar is typically fast enough that I can make it work without combat. The jet bikes move 16. One of my favorite things to do with the jet bikes, I don't do it a lot, but sometimes I'll do it, is do kind of a Queen's Gambit maneuver with them, where they get all the buffs and they move to the center of the table where I can shoot something, kill it, but then not fire and fade back behind terrain like they normally do. I do this a lot late game, where things becomes kind of awkward, and my opponent has to dedicate a decent amount of resources to removing the bikes, because it is 9 Space Marines, and 9 Space Marines do die, but they don't die to the drop of a hat. They die to something fairly substantial shooting at them. And it forces my opponent to bring out that heavy hitter, which then, whatever I have left in reserves, Baharoth, the Avatar, the Dire Avengers, the other unit of jet bikes, can then jump out and polish off. I like this against World Eaters especially, where they have to play this kind of tradey game where they want to make the game stretch out over 5 turns so they can get their secondaries really reliably, and you want to end it very quickly because their secondaries are a lot better than yours. And I can't take a reliable Psychic secondary because they have that 4-up deny, which overrides my +2 auto 6 kind of War Patrol plan. So that's something I like to do on the jet bikes. I don't do it often. Really, most of the time, you have to protect that unit like it's your life, because if someone gets an angle on it and they can hit it without all the buffs up, then it can just evaporate. I said earlier, 9 Space doesn't die to anything, but 3 or 4 die, and 3 or 4 dying is really bad. Because 9 is a critical mass where all the buffs really support it, and it kills almost anything in the game. It's shocking how much damage that does. But 5 or 6 plus a bad morale tester, only leadership 7, can lead to some really nasty things happening. All in all, I have a couple of go-to secondaries. War Patrol is my favorite with this one. It's a 12 basically every game, unless my opponent doesn't have a 4-up deny strat. And even then, sometimes I'll take it because it means they're not using that strat on Guide or Doom or Fortune or whatever other really important power I think is going to be needed that turn. I really like behind enemy lines. Turn 1, it's almost always the Shroud Runners. Baharoth is really good at that. And then late game, a lot of times, there'll be a jet bike unit or a warlock, or the Avatar can do it, where the game's gotten kind of scrummy, we're getting down to the last bits, and I can move 22 inches or 44 inches and just go boop and put whatever I need to in the back corner. And that can be really fun sometimes if they don't have, like say Baharoth's at full health, and they only have 1 phase of damage left. If they're not able to get back to charge me, I'm leadership 11, so I'm basically immune to things like the Herpetrack strat, or Ravenous Terror Shades, or then you can just sometimes survive. Or if I roll the 4-up on the Phoenix Reborn, and then there's a really annoying nuisance piece in the backfield. And then I really like taking battlefield data or banners. It's very mission dependent. If there's an easy one, I'm going to swap it out for a kill secondary, like I'm probably going to take Bring It Down against John. But the Avengers come on a lot of times from strat reserves, or if I have the extra CP, I'll put them in the webway so they can deep strike. And they can still action and shoot. So they drop down, they shoot something with battlefield data. The Corsairs do the 2 flanks. The jet bikes a lot of times can do it. If I don't need the damage in turn 4, turn 5, they move 16. which means you can stage them pretty far back in a table quarter and then move them over to be able to rod successfully in another quarter. It just requires some pre-measurement and some staging, but I really like that. If I have Will of Ossuary on, then they can do that and still shoot, and it's pretty fun. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the list. It's not super different than your standard Hail list. 17 jet bikes is too much in the wider meta. I don't love it all the time. It's a lot of points in one basket, but I made a very defined call in this case, looking at what I was going to have to be dealing with going into the game. And I think that having the raw damage output, being able to tell my opponents, if you come at me, I'm just going to kill you, is really important, really effective, and something I value a lot in this current meta. So I really hope that you all have a great time watching these Art of War Streamhouse RTT games. Remember, to like, subscribe. There's a whole bunch of sponsors that are really awesome, so make sure you check them out, support them. Make sure you sign up for the War Room. I'm pretty sure there's a free trial going on, or you can get a couple of days free. It's an awesome service. It really helped me out a lot when I was learning the game. I still use it a bunch. There's all kinds of tips, tactic videos, battle reports, things that you don't really find anywhere else on YouTube or beyond, led by the best 40k players in the world. And I'm really excited to be joining them on this adventure. And I'll catch you around and hope to see you guys in the chat and in person.